This video is sponsored by Knuckles0x, Crimson Manifesto, and Jelpy. Stay where you are! These words rip from Bardock's lips as he powers up. His now pure white aura flaring as a warning to the figures who have materialized in his bedroom. It stands to reason that Frieza would track him down sooner or later, or maybe it's that weirdo Devilman again. He just thought he had more time, more opportunity to properly ready Raditz and Kakarot for the fight. As it stands, Gine and the boys have no chance against anyone stronger than a Frieza Force foot soldier, so until he can scope out the strength of these enemies, he'll have to fight alone. Then, as the light of the aura passes over the intruders, he freezes, knowing these faces. The kid and the Mechian from Planet Cereal, and Muesli. Letting out a surprised exclamation, Bardock drops his fighting stance, while at his side, Gine slowly pulls up the sheets to preserve her mate's modesty, as he has literally and figuratively been caught with his pants down. However, Bardock being Bardock, shows little concern for such earthly concepts as shame and modesty, striding forth to shake Monaito's hand, while demanding to know what the newcomers are doing here. It is a red-faced Muesli who answers this. Though agreeing with Gine, she suggests they pause long enough to let the Saiyans get dressed, with the pair quickly complying, before adjourning to the kitchen, so as not to wake up Gohan and the kids. When they are all settled, Monaito opens the story shortly after Bardock's departure, explaining how Elec and his forces wasted no time in moving a people named the Shigarians onto their home, as well as in inducing Granolah to serve as a hired gun for him. Though here, Muesli interjects, evidently upset by the concept of her son working for such a vile man, let alone her own killer, as she skips ahead to her awakening inside her own grave, nearly rotten and crawling with space maggots, but alive enough for Monaito to heal her and get her back on her feet. Thankfully, Granolah was just returning from a job, and so Muesli was able to reach him without having to confront Elec, explaining to her son the true nature of what had happened on the night of her death, and how as unbelievable as it was, the Saiyan he had sworn vengeance against was their protector, not their enemy. As his mother reaches that part of the story, Granolah speaks up for the first time, giving a gruff, half-grunted apology to Bardock, his mismatched eyes still on the floor, and his arms tightly interlinked with Muesli's, as if he's afraid that by letting her go, he may lose her all over again. Shrugging as if to say, don't worry about it, kid, Bardock then returns his attention to the adults, as Monaito picks back up as the narrator, explaining how it was then suddenly imperative they leave Planet Cereal without leaving a trace, as it would only be a matter of time before Elec realized someone had stolen his property, and inevitably sought revenge. And so wanting to avoid the gangster's wrath, and also seek out the noble Saiyan, who he knew must have been the cause of Muesli's miraculous revival, Monaito himself suggested they use the Dragon Balls in order to take them to wherever Bardock had hidden himself, an offer neither Cerulean had logical cause to object to, with them spending the last few months searching for and gathering the balls, making their wish, and now appearing right in Bardock and Gine's room. Now that they are all caught up to the present, Bardock asks the next logical question, what exactly these three newcomers want now that they are here. Rebuking him lightly with her eyes, Gine apologizes for her mate's bluntness, though in a calm voice, Muesli replies that it's to be expected of a Saiyan, her tone conveying a deep-seated conflict, as she clearly sees Bardock as the savior she told Granolah he was, though also the conqueror who burned her world, and act not easily forgiven. In fact, as Bardock surveys his three house guests, he sees a perfect spectrum with Monaito clearly regarding him as a hero, while the boy is still radiating distrust and hatred no matter what his mother may have told him. Not wanting to linger on the subject, Bardock gratefully grasps at the lifeline Monaito provides him when he asks what the Saiyan has been up to since leaving Planet Cereal, with Bardock regretfully recounting the passing of his squad, as well as his family's flight from their own doomed planet, and the shelter they received from an old man named Gohan here on Earth. Though he could have stopped there as it would have been within the purview of what the Namekian asked, Bardock presses on, shame in his voice as he speaks on his own slide into inebriated despair, and the nightmares he would have of Muesli's grim fate, which haunted him well into the day. At these words, something twists in Granolah's face, and as his grip on his mother tightens briefly, Bardock is left to suspect that he might not have been the only one plagued by these dreams. All the same, he does not pry, instead explaining how Gohan had told him of Earth's Dragon Balls, and how he had begun his quest to revive Muesli. But here, the Cerulean boy cuts in, calling Bardock a selfish bastard. He didn't revive his mom because he felt guilty, he did it to catch up on his beauty sleep. However, internally, Muesli urges her son to shush, muttering that it's complex, and that adults can have multiple reasons for their decisions. Though in a flat tone, Bardock replies that the kid's not entirely wrong. Sure, he felt bad about her death, but he's seen hundreds, maybe even thousands of people die, and he's never thought about wishing them back. The reason she got saved is indeed because she haunted his sleep, and so the scarred Saiyan is sorry to disappoint, but he's no hero. Following this declaration, there is less zeal to the way Bardock finishes his story, glossing over much of his travels, and quickly reaching the point where he and Kami revived Muesli. This of course fascinates Monaito to no end, with him having several questions about the Dragon Balls here, and their Namekian creator. Unfortunately, this is far out of Bardock's area of expertise, seeing him realize he learned very little about Kami, and so he tells the old slug that he had to ask the god himself. Nodding, Monaito expresses a great interest in meeting his kinsman, to which a new measured voice replies that the feeling is mutual. Turning to face the sound, everyone finds Kami floating above them on some sort of magic carpet, while besides him stands a short man in a vest and turban who introduces himself as Mr. Popo, Kami's attendant, and by the feels of it, one of the strongest beings on this planet. Shooting the Namekian a slightly reproachful look as yet another uninvited guest, Bardock asks what he's doing, to which Kami merely answers that he felt three new presences who appeared on Earth without his notice, and as the Guardian, it was his duty to investigate. street. Looking to a shocked Gine to see if she would mind his breaking the taboo of doing so inside, Bardock ends up lighting a cigarette to Toku before he lets out a somewhat disbelieving exhale, though he does not inhibit the old slug as he and Mr. Popo leap down from the carpet to speak with the alien visitors, or at least the new alien visitors. However, a moment later, he wishes he had, as the impact of Popo's feet on the rickety wooden floorboard sets them to rattling with enough intensity that soon 3 new faces make their way into the already crowded kitchen: Gohan, Raditz, and Kakarot. While Gohan has the good sense to stay mostly quiet, having experienced this kind of weirdness once already, and knows he'll get more value out of simply listening to all the exposition going on, while Raditz, as he's become likely to do, takes a cue from his grandfather, and so too stays quiet, simply eyeing off the horde of newcomers petulantly. Kakarot, though, is a little ball of energy, excited to be up so late, and to be meeting a whole bunch of new people, with him quickly and amicably introducing himself as Goku, like his mama and grandpa taught him to, before asking who they all are. Finding this rather endearing, as it reminds her of Granolah in his younger days, Muesli is the first to introduce herself, kneeling to shake Goku's small hand, while Kami and Monaito follow the thrilling woman's lead, and even Granolah gives his name after a little prompting from his mother. With this introduction out of the way and Goku having unknowingly broken the ice, the conversation returns to its previous trajectory, with Kami and Monaito getting to talking, with the Guardian clearly being as fascinated by another Namekian as Monaito is, though for very different reasons, as Kami hopes that perhaps the stranger will help uncover his lost heritage. To this end, a deal is struck, with it being decided the trio from Zero will stay up on something called the Lookout, an offer no one objects to, as it means the sanctuary they seek. Though Kakarot does pout a little at having to say goodbye so soon, with Muesli unable to keep from smiling at the boy, and she promises to come visit him sometime real soon. In fact, maybe it would be a good idea if she and Granolah gave Monaito and Kami some space and stayed down here on the surface, somewhere nearby. But recognizing the kindness of a fellow mother, Gine suggests that they stay with them, even offering to prepare a midnight snack for the weary travelers. Graciously, Muesli accepts, though when Gohan mentions it would be a bit cramped for them all to stay there in their little home, she agrees, offering to find her own accommodations, until Bardock cuts in, suggesting that he could easily get a spare capsule house from his friend Dr. Briefs, as he already mooched this one after Gohan's shack was destroyed one too many times to be worth repairing. Nodding, Muesli replies that she will be grateful, though for now, she can stay in the remnants of that shack, while Granolah can stay here on the couch if there is one to spare. Puffing out his chest, Granolah makes an attempt at chivalry, saying he'll take the ruins, and she can have the couch. With a chuckle and a kiss to the boy's forehead, she replies that even having died once, she's still far too young to have her son worrying about her, so he'll be sleeping on the soft warm couch, no buts. Chuckling under his breath at the mama's boy, Raditz whispers in Kakarot's ears that he bets the green-haired poser couldn't handle a single night outside, though it seems sight isn't the only sense Ceruleans have in spades. As rounding on Raditz, Granolah suggests that if he's so tough, why didn't he take his mom's place sleeping outside? A little flustered, Raditz scoffs that it's not his job to give up his bed for a stranger, and besides, he's not gonna let some mosshead tell him what to do. Childishly, Granolah retorts that he'd rather be a mosshead than a pineapple, but before things can get ugly, Bardock cuts in, telling them both to cram it in his dad voice, before declaring that he's going to bed, and he'd advise they do the same, since if someone interrupts his sleep again, or if he hears a peep out of one of these brats, they'll be receiving a very intimate flying lesson courtesy of his boot. Then, to the surprise of everyone, he heads not for his bedroom door, but for the front one. His intention's clear, while at his side, Gine gives him a soft appreciative kiss on the cheek, promising that they can try again soon. And just like that, Bardock's clan acquires 2 new members, with Muesli quickly making an effort to integrate herself and help out however she can to pull her and her son's weight in exchange for safe harbor, while Granolah begins hanging around with Kakarot and Raditz, mostly because it's the most interesting thing going on, not that he actually wants to hang out with Saiyans or anything. This, of course, as it always does, leads to hijinks, like the mint-haired boy being awoken upon the early morning time set for Kakarot and Raditz's latest attempt at training with Bardock, with Goku stepping in to stop his older brothers from bickering and waking up the rest of the house, in turn properly explaining what they're doing. However, instead of rolling back over or heading back to sleep, the green-haired boy decides he wants to see this, a chance for Raditz to back his claims, as he had already gone on a few minor hunts for large rare beasts for the heaters, so he certainly expected to know more about combat and ambush tactics than these knuckleheads. And accepting this barb, Raditz decides then and there today's attempt will be another ambush style, just to show Granolah up, stating this confidently as the boys line up like a totem pole to peek out the door into the kitchen, where Bardock too is readying for his morning walk, fighting the urge to side his son for once again mentioning his plans within earshot, as he leaves the house and begins strolling down the mountain as usual. Moments afterward, the 3 aspiring warriors make their way after him, with Raditz using the traveling to cover the trees to use the remaining shadows before dawn, causing Granolah to internally but begrudgingly admit the soundness of this strategy, even putting his own spin on it by moving a tad more slowly and staying further within the cover of the shadows while watching keenly, and becoming very glad that he does, as he doesn't agree with all of Raditz's inclinations, like the choice to split up from Kakarot so they can attempt a pincer attack on Bardock between the road, and that instinct is proven correct when Bardock allows the two's Ki Blast opening attacks to simply collide and detonate by weaving out of the way, throwing both boys off balance and making them fairly easy to take out with single blows. Though exhibiting their speed to apply an earlier learned lesson, Bardock quickly recognizes and compliments his boys on leaving such convincing after images, turning back to see them regrouped, and their tag blast double Sunday barreling towards him as he smirks, leaving the boys at least some hope until he deflects the twin blast blast away into the air, using his own after image to reappear behind them and place his palms gently on their heads, before lazily claiming that it'd be a double kill if this were real. So that's win number 459 for him. However, as he begins to give the boys their tips for tomorrow morning, he finally senses Granolah tense his energy, feeling some amount of shock as he goes so far as to estimate the boy is well above Gine, that Mr. Popo guy, and even the kid's own mom, likely making him currently the second strongest being on Earth. And thus, it is a rather powerful and well-honed bolt of green ki that goes streaking by Bardock's head, as the scarred Saiyan dodges thanks to preempting it, noting the green-haired youth's max power is nearly twice as strong as the most impressive blast that Raditz has mustered for him before, at least on his own. Needless to say, impressing Bardock and seeing him sternly call for Granolah to come here and show himself, more so out of excitement than actual anger at the kid taking a shot at him. And shortly after, the cerulean boy makes his way out of the tree line, obviously gassed out after putting everything he had into that shot, to the point that at multiple times he thought his heart had nearly stopped. He was focusing on controlling his breathing so hard, and this Bardock guy still dodged him from as far out as he was, more so asking himself in the group how he did it. While Bardock actually thanks him for this sound assessment of his own process, using that to surmise what the boys did wrong, and what they keep messing up on with their ambushes. The first strike needs to be the only one if possible, so holding anything back or trying any flashy new tricks is counterproductive to that. Granolah in turn at least glows that this proves Raditz really doesn't have the combat experience he brags of, while the long-haired Saiyan scarred father in turn looks down at him and is blunt, citing that first off, Granolah reminds him a lot of Raditz, at least in terms of their egos, since when sniping, a headshot is just showing off in its own right, making a point to stress that only the most confident and accomplished marksmen even attempt them. Otherwise, center mass is where he should be aiming, as there are far more likely sure kill targets there. He then even demonstrates by pointing to a myriad of other targets where the torso Granolah would have been much more likely to hit. Beyond this, the Saiyan also offers that his people's sniping style of fighting is impressive and all, especially in long-range skirmishes, but when you don't ensure that you kill your target and just reveal your position, it winds up as a useless gimmick. Though from the looks of his face, the cerulean is obviously not wanting to hear this from one of his planet's conquerors, and so returns to arguing for his own pride, as he still doesn't get how he even missed, stating it flat out made no sense. This time though, Raditz pokes fun, bragging that it's not surprising he doesn't know about ki sense, and in turn, blowing Granolah's mind that such an ability is even possible, compartmentalizing the fact that he doesn't really know how to use it very well either. This of course though results in the two quickly wanting to come to blows, with Bardock and Goku both asserting for the two to knock it off in unison, before sharing a look of exhaustion at their constant bickering. Though as they begin proceeding back to the house, Bardock asks an important question: if Granolah will continue joining the little morning walks, since he could probably help him figure out some ways to set up his shots that don't leave him defenseless. He could even teach him how to get in and brawl up close if he likes, to which the boy somewhat reservedly responds he'll think about it, with Bardock chuckling that he hopes he does, now a bit excited that having Granolah around might really help Raditz and Kakarot's training. Though as they reach the top of the hill and can see the house, Bardock spots Muesli posted up outside the door, arms crossed and very clearly upset about something, while glaring daggers directly at him. But this is where we'll be leaving this story off for right now. That's going to be it for part 7, and I hope all things considered, the introduction of our full house with the cerulean survivors joining up with Bardock's family didn't feel all too rushed. Grand scheme of things, this is the 9th installment of a series only up to its 7th officially numbered part, so we certainly are moving. Besides that, I'm already well prepared to go over 20 parts with this series, not even counting any of the 0.5 content in that number. Obviously, I've already played around with some headcanon for backstories and flubbed some timing and ages on certain things, but you guys seem to vibe with that, and I'm enjoying the challenge of balancing the interest, lore, and logic of things to kind of still do a Dragon Ball story in a way that's very, very recognizable, but kind of taking it back in age and having certain things still happen to Bardock in just his generation. So next time we'll establish a new status quo, get the Ceruleans welcome to Earth officially, and even may fit in another Dragon Ball quest done by a brand new form of the Dragon Team. So please do leave a like, comment your thoughts, and engage in some discussions in the comments for extra algorithm fueling, and make sure you've subbed and turned on notifications so you don't miss the next installment. As is tradition, shout out to Valerius via Mr. Negative for their aid in bringing you custom art for the visuals. Use those links in the comments of their stuff to check out their work and their individual social medias, and consider getting yourself a commission while you're at it. Also to Pickle Dill, who co-wrote this part from my notes and has continued to be a big help as a writing partner for it. They of course have their own Dragon Ball content on their podcast channel, some of which I've helped them out with, one of which will even be in the end screen of this video. And of course to our special supporters of the day, New Monkey King, Brandon Mitchell, Novak Daddy, Lily, Normandy 1998, Jay Ray, Narku, Trent Rouse, Jordan 523, and Indico Saturn 64. Thanks to these and all the other supporters of the channel, and with that, be sure to take care of yourselves and the world around you. And as always, go beyond plus ultra. And I'll see you guys next time.